Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Kaufman Corner. As I don't think anybody has any idea to the physical limits that Rany Jazayerli, the doctor, good doctor, Rany Jazayerli is pushing himself tonight after a little expedition on the slopes. He is back at it, ready to talk some Royals baseball via the Kaufman Corner. And there's actually some maneuvering. The Royals late to the party, but actually getting something done. Aroldis Chapman is a Royal. Michael A. Taylor is not. It's time for the Kaufman Corner to break it down.
This is the Kaufman Corner Podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
And good evening and welcome to the Kaufman Corner Podcast. If you're catching us via the podcast later in the week, remember we stream live normally on Sunday nights. Tonight it's a Monday. We come to you on Monday the 23rd. 10 p.m. Central is when we normally stream live. We'll be Monday again next week as we have the AFC Championship game going. We know many of our Royals fans are also Chiefs fans, and so they'll be watching the AFC Championship game, hopefully watching a positive post game. So we'll do it on Monday again next week. We welcome in, as I said, Dr. Rany Jazayerli. My name is Soren Petro, and real news, Rany. Real news. Where do you want to start? This blockbuster deal that has baseball shaken to its core, as Michael A. Taylor has been sent to the Minnesota Twins, or the rebirth of Aroldis Chapman as a dominant reliever? Clearly, that's what's going on here. Which one catches your fancy more?
Well, I always like to hear the bad news before the good news. So I'd like to start with what I consider to be the bad news, which is the Aroldis Chapman sighting. And we may or may not agree on that, but let's start there.
What do you think? Why you first? Why is it bad news?
So to me, the reason I don't like the signing is I just feel like the reward isn't worth the risk. The upside here is limited more than the downside, and for a couple of reasons. And I know that there's a small but significant portion of the Royals fan base which would be upset about signing Aroldis Chapman, no matter how well he performed, because of an incident he had several years ago before. But which ultimately precipitated his leaving Cincinnati, where he was accused of a domestic violence incident. And while charges were dropped, Major League Baseball did suspend him for a time, and the Cincinnati Reds basically traded him for pennies on the dollar. And I want to tread carefully here, but I want to say why I actually don't think that in and of itself is disqualifying, because I want to start there. Aside from the fact that the incident happened years ago, it would be very strange to suddenly blackball a player after he's been playing without incident for several years now with the New York Yankees. My personal feeling is that an incident like this, the penalty cannot be simply instituted at the team level. This has to be a league-wide decision, in part because obviously you can hold to a principled stand and not sign a player, and then your opponent signs that player and putting you at a disadvantage. And I don't think any team should have to purposefully disadvantage themselves when their opposition is not morally obligated or legally obligated to do so. I do also think that the fact that Aroldis Chapman has not had any incidents of that nature since the original incident is even more of a reason not to make that an issue in 2023 when it wasn't necessarily an issue for the New York Yankees in 2018. And I have a personal lack of comfort with blackballing players in general. I mean, this I felt the same way about Barry Bonds when no team in baseball would sign him after the 2006 season when he was still like the best hitter in baseball. I didn't agree with NFL teams not signing Colin Kaepernick. So this is as much a political issue as anything else. I think it's certainly a reason to be reluctant to sign Aroldis Chapman, but if you believe in second chances, if you believe that people are capable of change, and I know this is one of the things the Royals actually do strongly believe, so it's very consistent with the Royals to sign Aroldis Chapman. It doesn't mean that the Royals are willing to throw out all sense of morality in order to get a winning edge. I mean, I think throughout the Dayton Moore era, we've seen that where the Royals would do things like bringing up a player at the beginning of the season and blowing service time because they thought it was the right thing to do. So I don't think you can accuse the Royals of being willing to compromise their principles in order to just get a winning edge. I think that this is a matter of the Royals thinking that a player deserves a second chance. And given that there have been no more incidents of that nature reported, I can be comfortable even if I am a little bit uneasy about signing him for that reason. And yet, having said all of that, prefacing everything I'm about to say, I still don't like the signing. In part because, well, for one thing, Aroldis Chapman is not very good anymore. Certainly wasn't good last year. And for a guy who has always relied on an absolutely electric fastball, his fastball velocity has been steadily declining. I think he's averaged 97.7 last year, which is still fantastic. But
My God, I mean, he's throwing pus.
Yeah, he is, but it's a little less pus-like than
it's
it was.
not pus.
He averaged
is not pus is 88.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah, it's more like it's pus as in it's filthy. How's that? It's purulent.
I think we should have gotten on the same page of our definition of pus.
Possibly.
But then you're the dermatologist.
You know what I'm saying.
I should
to me, pus
around to your side.
Pus is filthy. So I could see it that way. Anyway, he's throwing not as hard as before. He literally average fastball. I think it was 100.1 a few years ago. 97 is still elite, but the problem is, aside from the fastball, he has a slider. He's basically been a two-pitch pitcher throughout his career. His command has always been poor, but when you throw 100, it doesn't matter. When you throw 97, apparently it does, because last year he, had the highest walk rate since his rookie season, 6.9 walks per 9 innings. He had the highest ERA of his career. He's 35 years old. So I'm not sure how much is left. And then on top of that, he missed time last year with a tattoo that got infected, apparently. He didn't follow medical advice on that, missed a month. The Yankees tried to bring him back in to have him to evaluate him to see if he was ready to come back for the postseason, and apparently he just didn't show up for the tryout. So there are above and beyond this one incident, there are definite clubhouse issues here. He does not have a great clubhouse reputation. The Royals are a very young team, a lot of rookies last year. So you combine decline in skill with not the greatest clubhouse influence. Yes, if he comes back, yeah, you got a nice trade commodity, but a trade commodity for half a season is not going to be. I just don't think he's going to bring back that much. And I think his value, he had a lot more value to a contender. I mean, it's not coincidental that the other team that was apparently hot and heavy for him was the San Diego Padres, who are actually trying to win now. I guess I could see a case for a team that actually thinks he's ready to contribute for a full season. In the Royals case, the best case scenario is you got him for 3 months and then you trade him at the deadline before his incentives kick in. And for the money they're giving him, you take the money they're giving him, $3.75 million guaranteed, add that to the Jordan Lyles money, and just put that money together and have signed one pitcher for $11 million. And now we're talking about getting an actual number 3 starter instead of getting a number 5 starter and then a reliever who's on, a potential reclamation project, who at best is going to bring back a prospect at the deadline.
I mean, a lot to unpack there. One, how much of you not liking this is the fact that he did not take care of his skin and had infections on his skin? How much of this is
you got me. You got me. I am offended.
Yeah. Is that,
I am offended. If he had just sought proper medical care, preferably from Clear Skin Dermatology with convenient office locations throughout Chicagoland, I wouldn't be saying any of this.
I did way back in the day when I lived in Vegas, get a tattoo. Stunningly, I may have been with a woman at the time, right? Who thought this would be a great idea.
And I'm sure you never regretted it ever since.
I really haven't, because I it's like down on my ankle, and it's it's a couple of Chinese symbols that I was told. How do I know? One is strength and one is wealth of spirit or something, So, but I did it all, put the little, the moisturizer, keep it covered, don't go in the sun.
Aquaphor is your friend.
Listen, I was in Vegas, for God's sake. I had to take care of it. I understand. Listen, I all jokes aside, I do get what you're saying, and I think you laid it out pretty well. I mean, you're going to ban a guy for life. Does no one deserve a second chance? He's obviously been given second chances already before coming to the Royals. And that is a difficult one. And I think every organization, I'll go all the way back to your point you made. Well, we're going to penalize the team that it happened, but everybody else gets a feeding frenzy to go ahead and take care of the talent. The team that this situation happens is obligated to release the guy, but every other team comes with negativity that gives that player that second chance, right?
And I will say really quickly, I'm a little bit colored in this particular incident because this happened. The Reds, I think it was last year of his deal, but he was like the best reliever, in baseball, more or less. And the Reds panicked and basically traded him for 4 nobodies, right? The Yankees, very Machiavellian of Brian Cashman, traded for the guy. He was dominant. By midseason, the heat was off of them a little bit, and teams wanted him again. And they were able to trade him at the deadline to the Chicago Cubs for 4 players that included a prospect by the name of Gleyber Torres, who, who's been declined here recently, but for several years was like an absolute dominant player for them. And it's, I kind of feel bad for the Reds that they did what they thought was right, and then the Yankees did what they thought was good for their team, and nobody remembers the team that did what was right. They remember the team that actually traded for a good player later.
First, I do want to clear this up. If you catch us via the podcast, if you're part of the live stream, you can make comments like Matt is making. Come on, Soren, talking about my tattoo. It means oversized hoodie. Quite possibly. Like I said, I don't know what the symbols. I don't read Chinese, so I'm could mean Royals fan, right? Don't know. Could be sucker got a tattoo. I don't really know. You are right about that. But to Randy's point, I do get it. And I think there are a lot of emotions. One, let me just say, as a guy who covered the Tyreek Hill drafting and the drama that surrounded him with his ex-girlfriend / mother of his children, at the time of his drafting, I saw the Royals take grief. Then I saw the man return kicks for touchdowns, and the town got over it really fast. Not everybody, but a lot of people did. Then I came across information that it seemed that maybe what happened at Oklahoma was certainly not as clear as what it seemed like. We got a recording. We got a piece of recording that made it sound like it was even worse, right? Then we got all the recording that seemed to not only clear him of what was going on at that time, but clear him of much of, if not all of, what happened in Oklahoma. I wasn't there. Only a handful, maybe only those 2 were there. But certainly what was said on that was very different. So not the Royals have to do their due diligence, and they have to feel comfortable having the player. I'll say this: we can't, as a fan base, sit and make jokes and even ridicule the organization for putting a priority on faith and character quality and calling it a weakness because they don't win baseball games. And then the first time they get someone, and I'm not saying you, Randy, I'm saying as a whole, sure, right? I've never heard you have a problem with faith. So this is not, well, no, Randy's got to have it both ways. Not at all. Randy's never said anything that I can think of about it. We've commented what other people say. But Randy's never had a discouraging word about how they go about it. But I do think for some of the fan base, a little bit of what, more whiskey, less milk and cookies. Domestic abuse is not whiskey. This is not just the boys will be boys. But again, I don't know what all happened. The Royals have made the decision that they will, they are okay with whatever the transgressions were. They're okay with moving forward with the player. I'll do some digging around. I don't know what I can find. I don't think I'm going to find much by asking Aroldis Chapman. By all accounts, there's still quite a language barrier for an ignorant individual like myself who, didn't bother to learn another language growing up. But So I'm going to set that piece aside. I think it's a very real piece, and I'm glad because there are a number of people who said, "What the hell are you talking about?" Some folks said, "Hey, do a Google search, right? You'll see what it is." And so I think it's an important piece that people know what all goes into this player. So I'm glad you brought that up, Randy. And we do set that aside, which I know it is something that will be with him forever. I'm going to harken back to a guy that I really respect in the game of baseball who told me a long time ago, and it's become one of the mantras that I kind of focus on when we talk about contracts. And that is a guy told me there's no such thing as a bad 1 year contract. That guy was you, Randy. You were the guy who taught me that lesson. There's no such thing as a bad 1 year
Well,
contract.
that's your fault for listening to me, Soren.
So honestly, I'm a little bit surprised to hear your side on this as you attack it because that's always when somebody gets signed to a 1 year deal that I'm kind of like, well, Randy said it, nothing's hanging over you after this year. I think the idea is to hopefully fix whatever it is that he needs fixing, get him pitching as well as possible, and trade him, or at least provide somebody at the back of the bullpen towards the back. I don't know, be exclusive, but that can help them close some games and give some wins to the starting pitchers and make the games important for the fielders so that they can't just kick the ball over the yard. I mean, I think there's serviceable use if they can make it better. And isn't this the ultimate test, right? Like, do you have the pitching people in place? He still throws 98. Can you reach a guy? Can you reach a guy who's difficult? That's part of the equation as well, right? You can lead a horse to water. You can't make him drink. Well, I think when a player thinks he's going to get a contract, and you said the other team that was hot to trot for him was the Padres. How hot were they? If 3 and change plus some incentives ends up getting him, they weren't that hot to trot for him. A few more bucks and they've got him. So if anybody should be like somewhat hitting rock bottom and looking for answers, and I think the market told him, you're not good enough. You're not getting a big contract. You're not going to play on a winning team. And I think this is a situation that franchises in the past have found themselves in a situation like this where it's been able to be mutually beneficial for both sides. That's where I'm optimistic. And if he really, really sucks, then you make and if he's a real pain in the ass in the clubhouse, you make an example of him and cut him loose. But if he can pitch and he's kind of a jerk, I don't know that wouldn't be a little bit good for this clubhouse. That results matter, right? I think this has been kind of a clubhouse of entitlement whenever they get to losing. All the prospects come up. You get 5 years to try to figure it out. That 6th year, really give it a try. And hopefully you got it so you can hit arbitration and really make some big money somewhere else. Screw that. How about be good enough to beat the guy out in front of you? This at least provides competition at the back of that bullpen. I don't see it as the great savior, but I don't see it as, other than the off the field stuff, I don't see where it can be a problem overall for a young team to do a little growing up.
Well, to argue with myself for a moment, since I'm the one who said there's no such thing as a bad 1 year contract. It's not the money. It's not even the roster space necessarily. Like, to me, this is more about the impact it has actually on the rest of the roster. That concerns me more than even the money involved. You mentioned, how interested are the Padres? Well, the reports are, and these are reports, and it could very well be misinformation from the agents who will always say that we had higher dollar offers elsewhere. But the report is that he was offered more money elsewhere, but chose the Royals because the Royals gave him the opportunity to close. And that in itself, to me, is a red flag. It's 2023. Saves don't matter. Everybody knows this by now, right? Everyone knows that a save is just a relief appearance in the 9th inning, and there's nothing magical about being the quote unquote closer. But apparently, Aroldis Chapman, that still matters to him. And that is, to me, a little bit of a yellow flag right there. But beyond that, if the Royals have made him promises that, yeah, you're going to be the 9th inning guy, then he's going to be the 9th inning guy, even if using him strictly in a 9th inning lead of 1 to 3 runs role is not what is best for the Royals to win ball games. If the other team has the heart of the lineup coming up in the 8th inning and they've got 3 lefties batting 3, 4, 5, and you go to a right-handed reliever instead of Aroldis Chapman there because Aroldis Chapman won't pitch the 8th inning, that's not helping the club either. And I find that interesting only because, well, not only, but also because Matt Quatrero is our new manager coming from the Rays, who are probably one of the teams at the absolute vanguard of using any reliever at any time in any role in order to get the most outs possible. So it will be very interesting to see how they use him. If it turns out that if he suddenly starts appearing in games in the seventh inning, then we'll know that that's not the case, and he's on board with the program of pitch when it's best for the team. But if they lock him into that role, I think he won't be as valuable as he otherwise would have been. And I think it also may send mixed signals to the rest of the team that we're going to use you guys in the best manner possible. It might send a signal that this one player has special treatment that the rest of you don't have, and that's also not a good thing. So it's all the soft factors here. The downside is limited. Yes, worst case scenario, he sucks. They cut him. Great. If he's good enough to earn out the incentives, he will almost certainly be good enough to trade, and some other team will need to, we'll end up paying for those. And if he is good, we know from past history that the San Diego Padres being interested in him is a really good sign, because if they can get Edward Olivares for Tim Hill from the Padres, and they can get Dylan Coleman for Trevor Rosenthal from the Padres, imagine what AJ Preller will give up to get Aroldis Chapman at the deadline. So there is an upside there, but I just worry the downside is more.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. How about this comment? Could the Chapman signing be a harbinger of a Barlow trade? I don't know that it means that, hey, it's tit for tat, that like because he's there, Barlow's on the way out. But the deeper you get your bullpen, I think the easier it is to make a move with somebody else. Would you agree with that?
I do, and I mean, if the Chapman signing frees the Royals up to make a Barlow trade they otherwise wouldn't have made, that is definitely a significant upside. I don't feel like those are necessarily correlated, and I've seen no indication from the Royals that they would be interested in trading Barlow before the season. Maybe at the deadline, but I think that would happen either way. What's interesting is if the Royals wanted to have a left-handed reliever who's got really good stuff, but maybe iffy command on a one-year deal, that might be a real enticing proposition for a contender at the deadline. They already have one. His name is Amir Garrett, and I think he sort of has gone under the radar with Royals fans. But I actually like Amir Garrett. The odds of trading him at the deadline almost as much as Aroldis Chapman. He won't cost as
Really?
much money, and he and he doesn't come with the off the field baggage that Chapman has. Amir Garrett seems to be a good guy in the clubhouse. Maybe a little bit almost too willing to stand up for his teammates, as we've seen from some on-field incidents where he has definitely stood up for his teammates in the past. But I mean, I guess if the Royals have cornered the market now on left-handed relievers in July, that could be an enviable position to be in. But I just feel like they already had the guy in Amir Garrett, and now, we'll talk about the other transaction with the guy
Right.
they picked up for Michael Taylor. They suddenly have quite a few left-handed relievers on the roster. My other concern here, and this may be getting too deep in the weeds, but with so many left-handed relievers on the 40-man right now, they've got Anthony Misavich, Ryan Yarbrough is sort of a swing man, and then we talk about Garrett and now Chapman. I just worry that this organization may once again try to bury or just get rid of Richard Lovelady. And if there's one guy on the 40-man roster that I really feel like is completely under the radar as a potential impact guy this year, Lovelady was a very promising reliever in the minor leagues. Cal Eldred, I'm just going to be honest, screwed him up. I mean, they butted heads, and if Cal Eldred butts head with a pitcher, I'm siding with the pitcher just on pure principle. And so he didn't get many opportunities at first. Finally started to pitch well, blew out his elbow. Came back late last year in Omaha, pitched, I think, saw 15 batters, struck out 9 of them. Give up 2 base runners out of 15 and struck out 9. I really feel like he could be a force in this bullpen this year. I just hope that this does not push him off the roster or make the Royals willing to give up on him prematurely.
I want to come back to Amir Garrett. I mean, I listen. I like Amir Garrett. I like any big hard throwing left-hander that you can get in there and work with. But I mean, we're talking about a guy with a career 487. I'm gonna go with some old traditional numbers. Career 487 FIP, career ERA of 5.08, a WHIP of 1.415. His career is worse than what is the worst year that you're calling Aroldis Chapman done. Those are his career averages compared to Aroldis Chapman. And I get it. Aroldis Chapman's been around a while. Do I know he's 34? No. Would I suspect he might be 38? Sure. And that happens a lot with a lot of the Cuban players. I think they've gotten better at it on the birth certificate thing. We don't hear about it as much, but he goes back to 2010. I mean, but I if he's somewhere around 34, guys have reinvented themselves. I mean, Justin Verlander went through a period where the velocity had ticked down, and he kind of had to figure out how to pitch. Is Aroldis Chapman, at that point where he's willing to embrace the art of pitching and not just throwing? If he is, there's still plenty of stuff there to be effective. That's where I would get off. And again, like I said, your comments. There's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. Listen, like I said, and I also think the fact that if they do cut him, like, fine. Like, if you have to make an example of him, great. It's a guy that's easy to walk away from. Like, we're not taking this crap. And you send a message that way. And I think the clubhouse could use a little bit of that.
I mean, if they're willing to admit to a sunk cost and cut him if things are bad, that minimizes the downside. Absolutely. With Garrett, I will say this: his FIP last year was 340. Chapman's FIP was 457. Like, absolutely, Chapman's career, there's no comparison. I mean, Chapman was one of the dominant relievers of the teams. But the lines are crossing. Garrett, I feel like still may have his best years ahead of him, and Chapman.
But Garrett's 30. If we were talking about a 24-year-old, okay, he's 30. He's not.
He's 30. Lefties come on sometimes later. He was like He was a college scholarship basketball guy, who came to baseball later, didn't fully commit to the sport until later in his life, and has the athleticism, obviously, of a two-sport star. So there's a lot of reasons why I like Garrett. Look, if I gun to my head, who do I think is going to have a better year? It's close, but the difference is, from a clubhouse perspective, I just feel like Garrett's a better guy. He's going to make less money. And I guess the question is, do you need both of them? Maybe you do, but I think the Royals they didn't have a huge pressing need for a lefty. But ultimately, the big thing here is not even just a talent. I just feel like I worry that the dynamic of that clubhouse, and this is hard for us to evaluate from the outside, but if Chapman had a reputation as a good guy in the clubhouse, flexible about where he pitches, et cetera, I would be more on board with this. I'm just worried that there may be, that the soft factors here may end up overwhelming any value they get out of him. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, and listen, I think they're valid complaints that you're voicing there. So we will find out. I do think that there's upside reason to give this a go and see what you've got with him. By the way, we're brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete. If you have any kind of parking problems, they can all be solved very quickly by our friends at GAN Asphalt and Concrete. You can find them online at ganasphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Tell them you heard about them here on the Kaufman Corner. GAN Asphalt and Concrete, one contract, all things parking lot. You can find them very proudly serving the entire metro area. Full service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. They are truly Kansas City's best. Find them online at ganasphalt.com. Let's turn our attention to the Michael A. Taylor trade. Rany, what are you willing to say about the fact that they finally got this deal done?
Well, here I'd like to end with the good news, and I like this trade both for the value they got for Taylor for 1 year of a very good fourth outfielder, but ultimately probably a very good fourth outfielder more than a starter. But also the mere fact that they made this trade that they should have made probably back in July. But you know what? In July, Dayton Moore was still in charge of the roster, and he's gone. And this was the right move to make at the right time. Certainly, not a moment too soon. And Michael Taylor. Let's pause to acknowledge what he did for this team. I mean, quietly one of the best transactions the Royals have had since they won the World Series. They signed him coming off 2 lost years with the Nationals. I think he got like 1.75 million. Yeah, 1.75 million his first year. Nobody knew if he could hit it all, and he didn't hit much, but he hit enough, and his defense was absolutely stellar, and he won the Gold Glove. Came back this year, and his offense was even better. He got off to a very hot start with OBP, and that tailed off, but still a 90 OPS plus from a guy who was a plus 19 defender in center field. I mean, he's the best defensive outfielder in the American League, maybe in the major leagues over the last 2 years, and a decent, bat. So combined, I mean, he had a 2.5 win and then a 3.2 win season by Baseball Reference. He was a really good player. They after that first year, they re-signed him 2 years, $9 million, which, I mean, $4.5 million for a free agent is not everyday player money. That's fourth outfielder money, and he exceeded that. Having said that, he's going to be 32 years old this year. There's absolutely a significant chance that he just starts the year cratering at the plate, or his defense is off a tick, and you go from having a useful commodity to having a replacement level player. If you're going to get value for him, now's the time. On top of that, the Royals have a bunch of outfielders that they want to look at, right? I mean, this as much as this trade is about the 2 prospects they got, um, it's also about opening up playing time for potentially, Drew Waters is penciled in probably as a center fielder right now, but Kyle Isbell, I want to see him get a chance. Like, yeah, maybe these guys aren't as good as Michael Taylor was last year, but 2023 is the year to find out, because hopefully by 2024, you're playing the guys that you think are going to help you win now, and you can't afford to waste development time and plate appearances on guys who may or may not be good. But this year you can do that, and we need to find out what Kyle Isbell is. We need to find out if Edward Olivares can play some outfield. We need to find out obviously where MJ Melendez fits in. Michael A. Taylor was, any playing time that went to him was going to crowd out opportunities for young players that the Royals really need to look at. This might end up meaning that Alberto Mondesi moves to the outfield. I don't know, but again, that's an option that really wasn't there while he was on the roster. So even before we talk about the players they got, I just feel like moving Michael A. Taylor was a no-brainer. And to the Royals' credit, they made the obvious but correct move that they don't always make.
We don't know that they would have gotten more last July, but you would have had more baseball of Michael A. Taylor. And I think that's one of the things. It's clear that J.J. Piccolo, I think a couple of things here. You can't say that Aroldis Chapman wouldn't be here. They mentioned about the kid. I forget the kid's name. Somebody had in the chat room that was
Luke Heimlich.
Yeah, Luke Heimlich. The Royals, danced around that signing for a little bit. So who knows whether or not Aroldis Chapman would have been brought. But Michael A. Taylor didn't get dealt. This does feel like this is J.J. Piccolo saying, no, we're going to get these guys out there. We're not just hanging on to our buddies, and we're going to make moves. And so I'm with you. I think the clear in the space part is important. Michael A. Taylor is a fine player, and you're right, a good signing for the Royals. I think there is something to be said when this is what we're celebrating. It speaks to how little signing they've done. But it was a good signing, and I wish him nothing but the best. He was, by all accounts, a good guy and did a fine job for the ball club. But now you do get to answer some questions. I mean, you need to find out. Like, this is what I talk about. Brad Keller is the most frustrating thing, and Adalberto Mondesi, 2 guys going into the final year of their team control, and you have no idea what the hell they are. And Keller, it's not from a chance of getting an opportunity. Same thing with Mondesi. It's been injuries. But there are times that they just mess around. And is it the guy? Like, it's like their guys get every opportunity. Brad Keller, Mondesi, they get to go wherever they want. Guys that aren't, which apparently was Whit Merrifield to start, keep getting sent down, right? Keep having to prove themselves. And I think this is at least like, listen, we have guys in center field that we want to take a look at and find out about. We're going to find out about it. I've said a long time, when you suck, embrace the suck. Like you have no expectations to live up to, and get done what you need to get done so that when you do have expectations, you know what you're working with. That's what this feels like to me. Now, I am interested. Neither one of these guys is an overwhelming top prospect. Both of them need to be taught how to find the strike zone. Big velocities, big swing and miss potential, a lot of missing of the strike zone completely. What makes this a good trade?
Yeah. So, well, first off, I also want to say, when you talk about wanting JJ Piccolo to be a little more transactional, it's a good sign he made this. What's interesting is making it with the Twins.
Right.
It's an in-division rival. That's a good sign that, not being afraid to do it. Because look, if you're, not planning on contending in 2023, what do you care if Michael Taylor goes out and has an MVP year for the Twins? Like, you're giving your rival a player for 1 year. Yeah, but they're giving you 2 players. If you think they're going to help you more, if you win the trade, you win it double, because it also hurts your in-division rival. But the Twins specifically, the Royals have made fewer trades with the Twins than any other team in baseball in their history. In fact, when the Royals traded Jason Adam for Josh Willingham at the deadline in 2014, a trade which, by the way, worked out extremely well for the Royals, because Josh Willingham, we don't win the wild card game without him, and I'm not sure anything happens after that without winning the wild card game. That was the first trade the Royals and Twins, I think, had made in my lifetime. So I just find it very interesting that he was willing to make that trade with the Twins even before the trade was announced today. The word was that the Royals had asked for, I believe it's Josh Winder, who was a starting pitcher who actually was in the Twins rotation mid-season. He got promoted this past year, which was a pretty heavy ask for a guy who's a major league ready starting pitcher for 1 year of a fourth outfielder. And the Twins obviously turned that down. Clearly, the teams were able to work out a trade for two lesser guys. But yeah, both Sisk and Cruz, Evan Sisk and Stevens Cruz, neither one's a top prospect. Although Steven Cruz was, I think, on the Twins top 30, and MLB Pipeline just plunked him down at number 30 in the Royal system now. They're both relievers, so you only have a certain number of relievers in your top 30 prospects. Anyway, they're both really interesting. I mean, Cruz is 6'7" and throws 99. All right, you don't need to do much more than than throw that hard from that close to the plate to attract my attention. I mean, his numbers were not that impressive this past year. I think it was in 2021 he had some better numbers, but the stuff alone is intriguing enough that let's see if the new pitching organization here can make some changes. Remember, Zach Bovee, the Royals' assistant pitching coach, was just hired from the Twins, so he's probably intimately familiar with these guys and thinks he can work something out there. So Cruz is a little more high risk, high reward guy. Evan Sisk is interesting. He's a lefty and he has a sidearm, almost submarine type motion. He doesn't throw nearly as hard, but he has a very funky delivery that I think is going to be
we know you'll love him, man. Sidearm, funky.
You know me.
Your Dan Quisenberry's channel. Do you like?
Well, he's lefty. I mean, honestly, he kind of reminds me of Tim Hill when the Royals have him, except he throws harder, I think. And his numbers this year, I think he had like the 157 ERA. I think was the lowest ERA of any reliever in the upper minors this past year. ERA for minor league pitchers isn't that important. 63 innings, 35 hits, 29 walks, 76 Ks. Like you said, even him, he has some control issues, but he's and he's going to be more of a situational guy. But really, for to get two of these guys, if you hit on either one of them, you win the trade. As far as I'm concerned, you got rid of a $4.5 million obligation. I mean, this essentially pays for Aroldis Chapman's salary, and you get two lottery tickets in a high upside arm, and then maybe a lower upside but higher floor guy who almost certainly will be a situational lefty in the major leagues. I like the deal. I like it quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, I do too. For all the reasons we mentioned, and you are supposed to be able to figure these guys out. This is what the big boys do. This is what the Rays do. They go get guys that have stuff, and then they refine it. They take away the pitches they can't handle. They give them a tweak to their pitches. Give them a little more dart and dive, whatever it might be. Yeah, this is how you have success at the small market level. So, but listen. I love that they had an asset that's not going to be with them next year, and they got something for him, and they have team control now moving. One of them's got to be on the 40-man. I forget which one it is.
No, actually, I believe neither one of them.
No, next year. I'm saying
next year. Yes.
You got 1 year.
They have a year, right? But the fact that both of these guys don't go on the 40-man now is actually quite important. This opens up the roster spot. The Aroldis Chapman signing hasn't been made official yet. I think it probably will be tomorrow. And now they don't have to cut anybody, but that's an important part of it too. I mean, you have to. Roster asset management.
They go hand in hand because you can't do one without. Well, you can do the other. You can do the second one, but you can't do the Chapman one unless the spot comes open, and they got that done. And so, for all that, that's like we want them to be transactional. Well, it wasn't just a matter of signing a guy; they also had to open up a spot. We're always adamant. I'm very adamant. There's probably close to 10 guys that you can cut. But they never want to give up those guys. Fine, they didn't have to give up one of those guys because they moved someone who's not going to be here. So the hand-in-hand part of it, this is more Tampa Bay Rays. Like I know we're all looking for that big signing, and and even signings that weren't that big, like Andrew Heaney and Evaldi for me, and the two bats that you had on your list.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I know we want those things, but that's not how the Rays do it. This is very Rays-esque, right? This is Guardians-esque in what they're doing. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see movement. The lack of movement to me is a lack of confidence in what you're doing. I've said it before. The Royals didn't make deals because they were too afraid somebody they moved might be good. They didn't know if they were any good or not. This to me Listen, getting to the bottom of Michael A. Taylor, well, I hope so. Anybody who's got a baseball card can get to the bottom of what he is. He's largely whatever it says on the back. He got a little bit better, and you detailed it a lot on the show about how his walk rate got better, and good for him. But at the end of the day, you know what you're getting, and now they get a couple of guys, a couple of live arms, and let's find out what you got. They want to build this thing around pitching, and this is how you do it. And it's not really, hopefully what this signals is it's an end of lobbing high first round grenades at pitching as well. That's not what the Rays do. While they're all about pitching, it's not by using high picks, at least not of late. It's certainly not what the industry and the analytic community would say. The high picks should be used on bats because they're much more likely to hit. And so hopefully this is their route. Throw numbers and upside and a lot of lottery tickets at the pitching, get better coaching, better development to refine as many of them as possible, and then use those high picks, which there's going to be at least one more. And if you look at some of the data on expectations for this year, probably another one after that. Those need to be used on premium bats, right? I mean, this does at least signal a move towards the analytic approach to building a ball club.
And the other thing is when building a bullpen, the Rays model is lots of different looks. And so the fact that you've got a lefty coming from down below, and then a really tall, hard throwing righty, like you can not just develop these guys and refine their stuff and make them better, but one of the things that the Rays have always done is because they're willing to use a reliever at any point in the game, they will bring in a guy to, based on the batters that are coming up next, that he is best suited to face. Matchups matter, and the thing that the Rays love to do with their bullpen is everybody in their bullpen is unique. They're not the hardest throwers, they're not the best pitchers, but they all do something that no one else does. Whether it's the angle that they throw at or the spin rate on a specific pitch. Maybe it might be, this guy's got a slider that moves, more than anyone else. This guy might have a fastball that rises more than anyone else. This guy might just have a really, really high over the top delivery or a very, very low delivery. And there's a lot of evidence that if a batter has to face from one at bat to the next, a pitcher, just like we know if you face the same pitcher 2 or 3 or 4 times in a row, the batter gets better. Well, if the batter has to face a dramatically different type of, skill set as a pitcher, if one at bat you're seeing a traditional right-handed starter, and the next one you're seeing a lefty who's throwing from the side, and the next time you see a right-hander who's throwing over the top 100 miles an hour, that actually makes it harder for the hitters. Their performance suffers when they're having to adjust from one at bat to the next. So that's a big, that is a really kind of underrated, I think, quality of the Rays pitching philosophy that allows them to be so successful on such a low budget, because relievers, especially young relievers, they can come up and they're immediately successful and they're making peanuts. And yet they have fashioned some dominating bullpens on very little cash by trading some of their guys who are close to free agency for more arms. I mean, this trade, you're absolutely, this is absolutely a Rays-like deal.
I
hope it works.
Yeah, I do too. I want to touch on this from Tony. He said, thoughts on Lesky saying there's at least another trade in the works. I haven't read David's latest column. I know he had a thing saying, and who could be next as far as a teaser for his column that's coming tomorrow. So I'm not sure if he's, what he's insinuating at. And if David's got something, he's got something. I don't know of anything else. And I will go maybe even a step further and say, I'm going to talk with some folks here over the next few days. Maybe I'll have some more next time we talk, or if you want to follow me on Twitter at Soren Petro, I'll put it out there if I hear something. But I kind of think the fact that they're having the press conference tomorrow, it could be as easy as they get the Chapman thing done tonight with everything's I's dotted, T's crossed, and they've got the trade, and so they're going to talk about it with JJ Picola tomorrow morning at 11:15 Central Time. Could be as simple as that. But I get the sense that if something was imminent, they wouldn't be having a press conference. They would wait. Maybe some groundwork's being laid, and David's heard some talk about that. We know that, I think the Ben Zobrist deal was talked about in the offseason before, and, they didn't come to fruition until the trade deadline. So many names are swapped around. But I would be a little surprised if something happened, but I certainly look forward to reading what David has to write about it and see what he's insinuating at. But just my 2 cents.
I certainly would be intrigued. I'm more than happy to see another transaction. Like I said, it's, the holidays are over and the Royals are finally starting to, make some transactions. And we've been advocating for that for a while now, so it would be hard to complain. But I want to see what it is first.
If Zach Greinke or Dylan Bundy were brought into this ball club, and same kind of thing as Aroldis Chapman, with a chance to try to get something going with them and then trade them, I'm all for it, and create some competition. So again, young guys aren't just gifted their spot in the rotation. You got to go pitch to earn it. I'm all for it. Plus, I wouldn't mind seeing what happens with Dylan Bundy in a bullpen if somebody was the one to finally give that a shot, because a lot of people thought maybe that would be his best spot all along.
Yeah, I've said this before. I really feel like Dylan Bundy coming up with the Orioles when the Orioles were just a wood chipper for pitchers, just destroying arms right and left, was the worst case scenario for him. And I've always wondered, if there's more untapped potential in there. And he had I think the pandemic year, he had a very good year with the Angels, and then he's kind of fallen off. But I still think there's something left. There's something in that arm. I wouldn't mind taking a flyer there. And of course, Greinke, I'd love to have him back. So, yeah, let's see. I'm obviously the payroll. They added with Chapman, but they subtracted with Michael E. Taylor. I mean, the payroll is less today than it was 3 days ago. So, they've got some wiggle room there too.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons to be on the positive side. By the way, be positive about Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the entire metro area. If you got any parking problems, they'll go away very quickly with Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Proud to be our sponsor here at the Kaufman Corner, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. You can find them online right now at GannAsphalt.com. Make sure you tell them you heard about it here on the Kaufman Corner podcast. One more thing we wanted to talk about, Paul Menhart.
Mm-hmm.
The Royals have made the changes with the pitching program up top. They've now made a change, or at least an addition, I should say, with the pitching program down low. Are you supposed to be excited about this?
Yeah, I am. I mean, we've talked about how, the Royals brought in Brian Sweeney, obviously, and Zach Bovee, two, completely new guys from progressive organizations to handle the pitching staff at the major league level. I'm not A+ hires, like no notes, right? We're happy. Those are the guys. They fit what we wanted. But all along we said, well, there's a need for some improvement at the minor league level as well, and we're waiting for the Royals to actually bring in some additions to the minor league pitching side, and they haven't done as much there as I'd hoped they would. But the one name that they brought in is Paul Menhart. I think his official title now is advisor. Let me find the exact name here. Pitching advisor in player development. And I didn't know too much about this guy, but you do some digging, and he has a very interesting background. He most recent experience was with the Washington Nationals, which initially didn't give me a ton of optimism. And the Nationals are not one of the progressive teams. They're actually one of the teams I would consider to be behind the curve when it comes to analytics in general, pitching development specifically. But he seems to be the guy kind of stuck out like a sore thumb in that organization precisely for that reason. And he had been their minor league coordinator for a while, but in May of 2019, around the same time they fired, I'm trying to remember who the manager was or before, they brought in Dave Martinez. Basically, if you remember 2019, the Nationals won the World Series, but they actually got off to a terrible start to the point where they fired the manager. They also fired their pitching coach, Derek Lilliquist, promoted Menhart to the major league staff to be their major league pitching coach. He'd never been a pitching coach before. The Nationals then go off and win the World Series. Like that's a hell of a debut as a major league pitching coach. And he was the pitching coach again the following year, which was the pandemic year. And the Nationals have the misfortune of being literally the only team in the history of baseball to win a World Series and then get to play in front of 0 fans the following season. I mean, you do have to feel sorry for them that they got no chance to celebrate. there was no, unveiling of the, big championship banner in front of a sellout crowd the following year. So they didn't have a great year, but it's completely understandable. It's a 60-game season. And then he was not the pitching coach anymore. So, the disaster that the National have become is really not on him. What I find really interesting, he actually spent, was it last year? I think after he was let go, he actually went to coach in Taiwan, which, you think, well, gee, did nobody want him? But it's also, I think, speaks well of a guy that he's willing to go all around the world to, not just teach pitching, but also to like learn. Yeah, he's very open-minded.
And he inspired Cliff Kingsbury. Like, hey, where you expand your horizons on coaching.
Yeah, well,
you head over to Asia.
Yeah, Cliff went a little bit farther, but yes, I'm sure Cliff is doing some scouting of football players in Thailand as well, certainly. But it just struck me that I think I want to say after the Royals fired, I'm not comparing the two, but I just make the point. When the Royals fired Brent Strom many years ago as their pitching coach, I believe Brent Strom spent some time coaching overseas or certainly international. Like it's a very Brent Strom thing to do. Pitching is pitching. I'll go wherever the world takes me in order to coach pitching and also to learn, new techniques and new ideas. Very open-minded. The quotes that I've seen from him is that he definitely has a very analytical, let's make a pitcher better kind of approach. So I just wanted to point out that he seems like, it was a very, very under the radar signing. And frankly, I wish the Royals had made more such signings, but I like his addition to the team.
He's not an Atlanta Brave, right? That's one thing that's there that we know that was a prerequisite a lot of times for he's not an Atlanta Brave. And like you said, he's not just doing it the way they've always done it. This is a guy that will do things. I think these are all, good signs. Like I said, my feeling was to give him a year. Like I don't know what it's going to be. I'm hoping that I'll be there in spring training. Knock on wood, barring some something from changing travel plans. We've learned things can change, but looking very good to get down there this year and get a chance to talk with some people. And I'm looking forward to understanding better what the overall picture is. But I think it's taking a little more shape here, right? I think we're seeing it. The moves are starting. Personnel's being brought in. The idea JJ Piccolo is not just hiring the same people that Dayton Moore had in. I think those are good signs. Doesn't mean it's going to work. But it does show that there is at least movement in a new direction, which I think is important.
I feel, I feel a little more optimistic now than I did maybe 2 weeks ago, when they really hadn't done anything except sign Jordan Lyles. And the Jordan Lyles signing still sticks out to me as like the one sign of, old Royals thinking coming through, just the one baffling decision in an off season that otherwise has everything else, even the Aroldis Chapman, I don't agree with it, but I understand where they're coming from. There is an upside there that I don't think we have with Lyles. But the small under the radar stuff, the coaching stuff, I really think that's going to make more of a difference than even the players that they are signing. And I am excited definitely to hear from them in spring training, to see what some of these pitchers are doing, not just the guys they're bringing in, but obviously Daniel Lynch and Chris Bubich and Josh Stillman, all these guys that they already have, all the raw talent that these guys can shape. So it's I'm quietly feeling optimistic. Some of that is the Chiefs are in the AFC Championship game. I'm sure that's got me in the right mood, but I'm very very interested to see where this goes.
A couple of house cleaning things. Kaufman wants to know when I'll be in Arizona. I'm there to talk to people, not watch games. So I'm actually always there before the games ever start. I can't remember the date. I want to say February 18th, maybe. Like it's the Saturday before full squad reports. And that's always on the Monday. It's after pitchers and catchers. So it's in there because they're all in one place. That's the easiest way for me to get things done, what I need to do. So I'll probably be there before any of the listeners of this podcast will be there. So I apologize. Otherwise I would give you a hey, but we're there when no one's around, right? It's the best time to be there to get information. Also, I wanted to point out, and I can't remember who it was who quoted David. Who's a friend of the podcast, who did tweet out, and I looked it up. He said on the 22nd, so yesterday, I heard the Royals have 2 or 3 trades in the works. Don't know any details, but I wonder if you see them try to knock out 1 or 2 before the Chapman deal is official. Boom, 1 down was his follow-up when that one came there. So he is hearing that there was 2 or 3 in the pipeline. So maybe there is more. And I'll talk to David on the radio show. And then the other one is, of course, hit that like button, hit that love button. You can smash that all you want. Doesn't cost you nothing. It helps us. We would appreciate it, Rany and I, for the podcast. And of course, make sure if you need any work on a parking lot, you call our great friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete, locally owned and operated, serving the greater Kansas City area since 1994. All things parking lots. If you got a parking lot problem, it will disappear if you call Gann Asphalt at 816-484-3338. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com. It's Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proud sponsor here of Kansas City sports and, of course, here on the Kaufman Corner podcast. So, Hopefully more trades to talk about next week, Rany. Creeping ever closer to spring training. And then, of course, we've got some guests that are going to be coming on with us as well. Remember, if you're looking to catch us via the live stream, again on Monday next week, we're going to get out of the way of the AFC Championship game since the local team, at least for many Royals fans, Kansas City Chiefs are playing. So we'll be back at it next Monday night at 10 p.m. So for the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, get those tattoos looked at. Make sure you take care of them. Don't want infected tattoos. I'll say that on behalf of the entire dermatology community and my partner, Dr. Rany Jazayerli. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB saying thank you very much for joining us here on Kaufman Corner.